I've tried to make this video a few times, and I'm just not. I'm finding that I'm having a hard time with it. We'll give this take a try. I'll try not to ramble. I'm going to try to be to the point because this is a video made for the family and maybe others that where it would be applicable of a good friend and longtime player who was contacted by some family of his that said, look, we're just interested in getting into this. We're getting into this being, getting into role-playing games. But we have no idea where to start. We don't know what game to pick. We don't know how to do it. We're curious. There's a bunch of us. We're in college. We have some time. We'd like to get a group together. What do we do to get started? And I think that's an absolutely excellent question. And I'm really glad that my friend brought it to my attention because he said, maybe you could perhaps give some thought to it and make a video for this family member. So that's what I'm doing. And perhaps it'll be useful to some of you out there. Now, I would suspect that most of my viewers, my regular viewers, have been playing for some time, and they're not in that space anymore where they're just starting out. They figured that out already. Most of you already have. And this may not be as applicable to you. So, but I still want to make the video because I think that if I were starting again and someone was just introducing me to the concept of role-playing games, I would want them to sit down with me and say, all right, Crispy, you want to play. I know you're eager. You have that kind of personality where you see something you like, you kind of go for it. But understand what it is we're doing. Because I feel like too often the advice that's even contained in the books that we buy and use for the mechanics, and the mechanics are important. So to my new entrance into the hobby, yes, you're going to need to understand the rules. So you want to pick a game where the rules make sense to you, or you can at least all of you in the group can understand it. So you're not in a situation where you have one person that understands the book rule, the mechanics of the game, and no one else does. And so that's just going to become that. Well, how do I do that again? What do I do? You want to avoid that. But the rules, as important as they are, that's not the key. It's not the key element. It's an important element, yes, but it's not the key element. I wish someone had sat down with me right when I was brand new and just said, look, when we're playing this game, what we're really doing is we're creating a fictional world, and we're pretending, while we're playing this game, we are pretending that this make-believe world actually is real. And your character, whoever your character is, and all of their quirks and foibles and strengths and weaknesses and all of their goals and desires, you're going to try to imagine for this brief period of time as we're playing the game that character is real and that you are that character. Now, that's not to say, so don't, before you get all, oh no, I'm not an actor, you're not going to be an actor. And don't think that you have to do voices. I don't do voices. It's not that. It's just to be in character means, as I understand it, it means that you are saying where your character is in the fictional world. You're thinking about your character's movement, actions, inspiration. You're looking through that character's eyes until such time as that character just feels like, I know this character now. Like if I met this character on the street, of course you won't. It's all make-believe. But and when you meet this character, you'd say, I really connect with this guy now. He's totally not me, but I understand why he reacts the way he does. It begins to have a bit of a life of its own. And that simulation of a fictional world and populated with these fictional and fantastic heroes, that's exciting. That's really exciting. And that is your goal. Now, your character may have a goal of becoming more powerful, or maybe the goal is to get the gold, rescue the princess, whatever it is, conquer the kingdom. Those are all great goals. Those will all happen. And as much as The game has that in it. That's not your goal. That's your character's goal. Your goal is the portrayal, the believable portrayal of that person who's absolutely, in this fictional world, that person is absolutely, they're hell-bent on vanquishing that monster that lives under the bridge. That is the character's goal, and then you portray that in a believable way along with the other players that are in your game. So you're all doing this. And if you're doing it well, which doesn't mean that you have to adopt some crazy accent or anything like that. You don't have to wear costumes. Please, you don't have to do that. You just have to make it clear where your character is and what they're doing as from the character's point of view. And as everyone else does that, the world comes alive. And that's the essence of what you're doing. And if you can keep that in mind, I wish that it had been explained to me a little better. And maybe I was just too excited that somebody did try to explain that to me and it just went right over my head. That wouldn't be the first time. But I think now, if I had started on that premise, then I'd be a much better role player now than I am, because I would have had all of this time, all of these years of practicing using your imagination, pretending, which is what this is. But don't be overwhelmed by that, because you've done this already. We've all done this. Kids do this when they play all the time. They create pretend worlds and imaginary heroes. And even if they're just playing with like Hot Wheels cars, they're pretending. Kids do this. Most of us have done this. But unfortunately, many of us, certainly myself, we let that imagination atrophy from what it was when we were just little kids playing in the backyard. Oh man, I remember when I was a little kid, I played with the little G.I. Joes. Now I'm not old enough that I had the big G.I. Joes. Mine were like the small guys, but my friend and I, a couple of really good friends, and I lived in a cul-de-sac, and we would gather and we would have these epic conflicts between these G.I. Joes, and we were really into it. Just as little, we were probably 6 or 7 or something. That pretend to us, a couple things about it, and I think the comparison is apt, because we didn't go into that play, just like you shouldn't go into your role-playing game with, I already have the story in mind. I already have how this is going to turn out. We didn't do that. We had somehow, and I couldn't, if you asked me, I couldn't tell you what the rules were. We had some rules, right? Couldn't just automatically say, well, my Snake Eyes is much stronger than your Leatherneck or whatever it is, right? Like I'm mentioning just the few that I remember off the top of my head. We had some rules so that the pretend was contained, but it didn't have an outcome already imagined. This story evolved or emerged as we pretended. And that's something else I wish someone had told me when I first started playing role-playing games, so that I would be so much better at it than I am now. Because most games, when you read it, they'll say, well, this is like cooperative storytelling. Well, sort of, in a way, I suppose. But it's also not that. Because my goal isn't the story. My goal is still the portrayal of the character. Now, one of you is going to get the opportunity, and hopefully you'll rotate this, because I think this is very helpful. You'll rotate the person who is going to be describing the world, the immediate world around the characters, and is going to be introducing and populating that world with other interesting people and obstacles and monsters and whatever it is. So you're going to have someone who's a dungeon master, a game master, whatever game you referee, judge. You're going to have someone that does that. But that's just that in essence is still someone who's being asked to just make believe. You're just being asked to make believe even more than what the players are. The players are just concerned about their character. They have to really try to imagine that character, portray that character as if that character makes sense. Whereas you, who's running the game, you'll have that, but you'll have multiple characters. You'll have multiple, not heroes, because keep in mind, when you're running the game, your job is not to outshine or hog the spotlight or over narrate or direct the players exactly where you want them to go. That is not your job. Your job is the same as theirs. It's to imagine the world in such a way that it makes sense. And the rules of that world are internally consistent, so that everyone else can understand the parameters of the pretend. I hope that makes sense. As I say it, I'm like, oh, this sounds like I'm just mumbo jumbo word salad. But I know that if I just try to read what I wrote, it'll be awful. So I'm not there yet. Maybe eventually I can do that. I've seen others do it. I can't really do that. But the problem is if you should take turns. You should take turns running the game, because then you get a different view of what's involved. And it'll make you a better player too. It'll help you with your imagination. Any closing thoughts on that? Well, if you understand that, and then when you approach the game, I think you'll approach it different. And I really wish that of all my years, and I've really enjoyed this hobby. I think it's fantastic. If I were to try to, I don't think I have to pitch it to you. If you are interested and you get that glimpse of that, wow, that fictional world that we were talking about, I almost could smell it. I almost could feel it when I was there. And that, it was tense and I was worried and I actually was getting some emotion on this, which is crazy, but it's not that crazy. And it's not that, if anything, what's happening is you're remembering the play that you used to have when you were a kid with all sorts of imagination. And that make-believe, and how every game was essentially make-believe. It should feel familiar. And I think that's part of the attraction, is that when you do this and you get into it and it's working, and then you're doing it together, which is also fantastic. Now I understand there's some that will have solo games and you enjoy them. That's fantastic. I'm happy for you too. But there's something that happens when you're there with your friends and you're imagining them, and someone says something that my character, or hopefully you're saying I or your character's name, and you're really trying to, this is we're going to pretend this guy's real, and he does something and it's epic. And you know what? You roll some dice and it all falls apart, and you'll remember that. Or it all goes incredibly well, or there's a complication. So you'll remember those. You'll have these things that will stay with you. Which is great. That is fantastic. That's different than just, I scored really, really high on the progress track on my, when I was playing Terraforming Mars, or, those are all great games too, but they don't stay with you the same way that when you've engaged that pretend, that make-believe, and it starts to really gel, and you get into that exciting time where I really felt like I was in the airlock in that moment, and the klaxon was signing, there's a light that's flashing, and I'm worried that I'm going to be spaced, that I don't, or the monster is emerging from underneath the bridge, and I could, and whoever your friend is that's running the game is imagining that too. They're imagining that monster. What would that monster be like? And that is what the real promise and premise of the underlying concept of a role-playing game, which makes it so fun, so addictive. It's something that once you get a glimpse of it, even if it's just a glimpse, it's hard to set it aside. It's like that, well, no, I got that chance to return to that pretend, to engage that imagination. I feel like I'm starting to repeat myself. So I'm going to wrap this up now. But I hope that you and your buddies, when you get together, and whatever your college is, Boston John didn't tell me where you're going to college, but I hope that you can remember that. Remember the goal as the player, and the game master or the referee or the dungeon master or the judge or whoever, they are essentially another player. They have different characters that they're running, but they have the same goal, a portrayal of a real thing, a real fictional thing. I know that sounds crazy, but I think that distinction is important because it will allow you to get into that flow state. I think Anthony may have mentioned it that way, where you'll play for 4 hours and it'll feel like 30 minutes. And it's just, what happened? Well, lots happened. That's the key. Lots happened. And it just goes, and your imagination's engaged, and you'll be just swept up in it, I'm sure. I hope this is of some help. If it is, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll think about maybe something else that could be helpful for a group that's just starting out. I'll ask Boston John to link this to you so that you get a chance to watch it. And hopefully some of you, again, I understand most of you, you already understand this. You've been playing for as long as I have, maybe even longer. And perhaps, or maybe it's likely longer, I don't know. But I hope that this reminder was helpful too, that this is really what this is all about, is that engagement, that pretend, that make-believe, that portrayal of the character is the goal. The portrayal of the character's goals is kind of the ultimate, as you can get into character. And we can be better role players and get more out of it. That's what I'm hoping. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.